You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Lauren Mechling.
Thanks for tuning into Author Stories. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Be sure to go to hankgarner.com and subscribe to the show. No matter how you listen, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Pandora, Spotify, or YouTube, you can subscribe to the show and never miss an episode. I'd like to thank some sponsors today. Scribophile is a respectful online writing workshop and writers community. Writers of all skill levels join to improve each other's work with thoughtful critiques and by sharing their writing experiences. We're the writing group to join if you want to find beta readers, get the best feedback around, learn how to get published, and be a part of the friendliest and most successful writing workshop online. Improve your writing by receiving detailed critiques. Learn from a vast collection of free writing resources. Make lifelong friends in our busy community of writers. Writing is a solitary art, but that doesn't mean you have to be lonely. Lucky for you, there are thousands of writers on Scribophile every day, and we're a really friendly bunch. You've never seen a writing group like this one? Join Scribophile today at scribophile.community. Business Essentials for Writers: How to Make Money in an Ever-Changing Industry by James Nettles. Business Essentials for Authors is your Business 101 guide for the publishing industry. Whether you've never published at all or are looking to take your professional career up a notch in an easy-to-read and conversational way, the book covers the 5 pillars of business. We look at all of this and more from a long-term strategic view, how to get the plan done, and the mindset to make it all work. Business Essentials for Writers: How to Make Money in an Ever-Changing Industry by James Nettles. Both Sides of the Law: The Casper Halliday NYPD Series, Book 1 by Nathan Roden. He shared his father's dream of becoming a detective. A prison sentence was not part of his plan. Casper Halliday's dream began to unravel 2 months before his 16th birthday. His father, Bobby, resigned from the NYPD after 15 years without an explanation. Casper's parents fought. Sirens closed in on their home from every direction. The sound that had always been a source of comfort now brought only humiliation. Bobby Halliday moved out. Casper's dream dissolved into a daily fight for survival. All he wanted now was to finish high school so he could ease his mother's burden. On his 17th birthday, in the throes of depression, Casper made a bad decision. That decision brought him face to face with one of the most dangerous men in the city. In Casper's world, there is laughter and there are tears. There's light and there's bitter darkness. There are improbable friends and unspeakable enemies. The Casper Halliday NYPD series launches with the most unlikely of beginnings. Read Both Sides of the Law today. The ebook edition includes a sneak peek of Ghost Man, Book 2 in the series. For the Words is a unique writing motivator unlike anything I've seen. For the Words is an online writing platform which motivates writers of all backgrounds to increase their word count through gamification. Writing can be challenging, especially when you need to consistently produce a high output of words. By injecting a little fun into the routine and using daily rewards to promote a healthy writing habit, For the Words makes it easier to reach that word count. We're a community of bloggers, professional authors, college and high school students, research scientists, gamers, and first-time writers from all over the world. Come for the words, stay for the fun. Go to 4, that's the number 4, thewords.com. Writers, the internet is one of the best tools for research and creativity. It can also be one of the biggest hindrances to productivity, distracting you from doing the seat in the chair, hand on keyboard work. Rescue Time gives you an accurate picture of how you spend your time to help you become more productive every single day. Spot inefficiencies in your day and become better at managing your time. Create a goal like spending less than 1 hour per day on email to help you stay focused. Set an alarm to tell you when you spent more than 2 hours on Facebook. Try Rescue Time and use our special discount code for 30% off a Rescue Time premium account by going to rescuetime.com/author stories. Let us help you rescue your time. Before we get into our show with Lauren Mechling, we have an audio excerpted courtesy Penguin Random House audio from How Could She by Lauren Mechling, narrated by Brittany Presley. Thanks for listening.
Geraldine considered her grapefruit. To an observer, it might have appeared that she was snacking, but anyone who knew her could attest that Geraldine Despont was a considerer. Perched on the window seat in her living room, her back upright against the washed-out January sky, she peeled the skin into careful ribbons and arranged them in a pile beside her. Rotating the heavy pink sphere in her palm, she was suddenly overcome by the grapefruit's erotic aspect. It was the fruit kingdom's breast, or, she determined with a little squeeze, more likely a buttock. Geraldine contemplated her own backside, which was rosy and muscular, with slight puckering by the thighs. The citrus connection certainly held up. Geraldine let loose a snort and flushed, remembering she wasn't alone this evening. Her roommate, Barrett, was in the den with his girlfriend, Katrina, who took epic showers in Geraldine's bathroom most mornings and availed herself of other people's bath products. Ever since Geraldine had taken to keeping her shampoo and cleansing gel in a hunter green canvas kit that traveled with her to and from the bathroom each day, Barrett felt free to accuse her of not liking Katrina. Liking had nothing to do with it. It was just that she didn't get Katrina. Her unintended roommate was a 20-something woman who dressed in rave pants and baby-sized t-shirts, as if airing out her navel ring were more important than avoiding looking like she'd wandered in from the mid-90s. Barrett, too, was bepierced and no stranger to the Toronto rave scene. God, could there be 3 uglier words in the English language? But at least he was serious about his work, and in the process of losing his hair. His head now resembled a half-blown-off dandelion, which Geraldine found touching. And they had history. Back when Geraldine was assisting the managing editor at Province, Canada's weekly news magazine, Barrett, then in his second year at York University, was an editorial intern. He showed up for work in shiny button-down shirts, and because no one else talked to him, eagerly fetched Geraldine cups of tea and typed up detailed pitches for long-form features, mostly to do with food politics or the changing Canadian city. Jane Jacobs was a big influence. Geraldine had no clue whether his ideas were special, but she was always good for a dose of encouragement. She even invited him to join her for tea a couple of times. Barrett had been terribly respectful of his colleague, never realizing that she was merely a 25-year-old who was planning on going to law school once she dug her way out of student debt. Geraldine did nothing to disabuse her intern of his perception that she was some all-powerful entity, never explicitly telling him that she simply passed his memos on to her boss, Barb McLaughlin. Barrett felt safe in Geraldine's hands, and who was she to take that away from him?
Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Lauren Mechling on the show with me. She has a fantastic new novel called How Could She, that is a delightful send-up of new media and media in general and relationships and, living in the 21st century. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited.
Here we are in the 21st century.
Here we are, living what we talk about. We begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Ooh. The thing that comes to mind is, I used to write fan letters when I was little I remember just reading magazines and newspapers at home and just putting fan letters to the authors in the mailbox and how exciting it was. And I felt like the connection or the idea of connecting with someone who was actually a real writer was, much more interesting to me than whatever the substance of the story was. I mean, I remember one was to a writer of a Psychology Today article that probably had no relevance to a 6 or 7-year-old girl. But my mom, I'm sure every writer, like my mom remembers me sitting in the corner writing and making up stories, since probably before I could write. And I think it was really in high school when I took it to the next level. I wrote a lot and read a lot, and I think it's when I switched over to reading books that were for adults, and I just found I was just like the transporting quality of books that would tell me stories that otherwise people wouldn't let me in on was so exciting and so comforting. Especially I was a very tormented high schooler, lots of feeling lonely, and then lots of hanging out with made up people. And I went to like a writers conference when I was in high school at Middlebury, and so it was always something. It was always my thing. I didn't play sports or collect baseball cards. I wrote.
Love it. I hear a lot of people talk about having a moment when they realize that the people behind books are actual people. And there's almost a moment of awakening for a lot of people that, that books don't just come out of the ether, that people actually work on these things. And then when you realize that, it tells you that this is something that you can do. As someone who was writing fan letters at 6 or 7, did you have an awakening moment like that, or did you just always know that the mystique was not real?
Well, I went to school in Brooklyn, and it was there's an amazing, I won't say program, it was really more just an amazing fact of going to school, that occasionally real writers, because so many writers live in New York, would come and, and come and address groups of kids in the library. I remember Grace Paley, who is one of my favorite, she's a short story writer, and she's a legend of downtown New York. She was an old lady at the time, and she was so, human. She was not, you could see every dimension of her, and she got up and read to us, and there was a warmth, and I felt a connection with her, I remember. And so there were several, I think Sharon Olds, poet, came as well. People just sort of passed by, and that was when I started to see that, writers were people who could walk into a room and they could look nervous too, and they could trip up on their words. And the mystique diminished a bit. Yeah. In a good way. Right.
So from going from a teen who spends her time with imaginary people and submits things to writers' contests and things like that, how do you then go from there to a career in writing, working in print publications and things like that? How does that path go for you?
I think the true, I can tell you where I ended up, but I think the thing that really helped me go from wanting to do something to doing it is a lack of self-consciousness. I think you have to be a little okay with embarrassing yourself to be a writer, be it interviewing somebody. It's embarrassing to ask, to, let's say, show up at an event and stomp over to someone and with a pad. It's not a normal way of having a conversation. Exactly. But if you can let go of that self-consciousness, then you can come back with a quote that makes a story. Whereas I know, I know for some people it's very, very difficult to come out of their shell. And that's something I had to do. And I encourage people to just stop judging themselves and just go for it. And in terms of writing fiction, it's also embarrassing. I have many things I've written that nobody liked or wanted to have anything to do with. And I think, the biggest difference between people who are writers and people who want to be writers is actually trying and doing it. And, it's just a matter of having that, I don't know if it's self-belief or delusion, but whatever it is, having that and indulging it and practicing.
Right. A lot of people talk about the two golden rules of writing is to be a writer. You have to read a lot and you have to write a lot, and you just have to do it. You're talking about your experience with interviewing people. I like to add a third rule to that, and that is to get out and interact with people, and just the art of the art of conversation is a lost thing sometimes, and it doesn't have to be a formal interview. Although I would posit that going through the interview process will make you a better writer, and for the reasons that you said. But for so many people, writing is such a solitary thing, and I think that the more success that you find as a writer, the more cloistered you tend to be, and it kind of becomes a thing that works against you.
Right. My favorite writer is Barbara Pym, who is no longer with us, but I think one of the, she wrote Comedies of Manner, and they all shared this hilarity and sadness, and she was never fully appreciated. She was English. She never got her due, and I really feel like that's the secret to why her works resonate with me so much, because she didn't get to a point where she wanted to cut herself off and just feel self-important.
Right.
She was she was sort of like invisibly infiltrating the world and gathering details. And so you can't just there has to be material and observations that are coming in, and that only comes from putting yourself out there and looking around and listening. I don't think anyone who writes fiction is just inventing things from nowhere. It's a lot of it's all a response to feelings and situations and personalities and dynamics that you can only get access to if you leave your apartment and put yourself out there.
Right. You have worked for everyone from the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, the New Yorker, Vogue. You still write a column for Vogue, I believe, and you've worked as a crime reporter. How do you feel like working on that side of the industry has helped you be a better fiction writer? Or has it hindered you as a fiction writer?
No, I think it's definitely given me amazing opportunities and excuses to put myself in situations that are not natural to the rhythms of my life. And I think it's through like brushing up against people and strangers and, going to report on things where I see new sides of the world that inspires me. And I file all sorts of things away in my head. Writing journalism it's a shorter term project, and so sometimes that can be a refreshing respite from writing a full novel. But I think it also, especially today, really, really, really trains you to edit yourself and to not meander, because I'm not a star journalist who gets to call the shots and gets to say, I will only write about key souffle if I get 5,000 words. I write to the space that I'm allotted. And so I am very, I pay a great deal of attention to pacing and to not wearing out my welcome with the reader.
That's a great, a great point too, because that translates to every kind of writing. You've got to grab the reader's attention, and you've got to make them go along with you on the journey, no matter what the topic is.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's fun though, because it's sort of the when you're writing a novel, the build up is greater because there's so much time when you're kind of doing something in secret or in the solitary practice, and then you finally get to interact with I love interacting with people, so it's really cool to hear what happens to your story when it goes out in the world and someone else absorbs it, and how it relates to the world that they live in and the things they see and feel.
Right. In the new book, How Could She? This is a fascinating story. One, it's really funny, which I was not quite prepared for in the beginning. But
Why not?
Well, I guess I just went into it with no expectations, and
Okay.
I was just struck like this is going to be a really enjoyable read, and then you kind of poke fun at relationships. You kind of poke fun at the New York lifestyle altogether. And you also kind of poke fun at the industry that you work in and the way it's changing and the way people navigate inside that. And it was really refreshing to see that no topic was off limits. And
Right. Oh my God, no.
yeah, and I definitely felt that like okay, Lauren is not afraid to step back and make fun of herself a little bit in that you live in this world.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love when a writer lets her guard down and just really lets us feel what she's feeling.
Well, I can't tell you how happy that makes me because I love comedy. The humor is the number one priority for me just because that's, I think, what makes life bearable.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect flip side of the coin to the, poignancy and the sadness that's also a part of being alive. And so anyway, I don't connect with books that have no sense of humor. And anyway,
Yeah.
so I appreciate your saying that it tickled your funny bone too.
Well, and like we talked about earlier, when writers start to take themselves too seriously, that allowing yourself to not take yourself so seriously and to really look at life and the industry that you're involved in and the career pursuits and the passions we have, if we can't make fun of ourselves a little bit or at least have a good laugh about it, then things have just gotten too serious.
I agree. I mean, sometimes it can, yes, I think I poke fun at everything, myself very much included. But yes, that's often my takeaway from anything. And sometimes people don't get it and they'll think I'm just being, judgmental or a jerk. But no, it's just the odd details and the sort of the inconsistencies or the paradoxes or the hypocrisies. That's what makes life really fun for me.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that just a second ago because there is a difference in being mean and making fun of things to make yourself look better. There is in the writing. Is there a line where you say, okay, that's too far. That's just being mean, and I don't mean to come across as mean. That there is a fine line there. How do you watch for that?
Yeah. Well, I don't traffic cop myself in that way. I think there are mean lines because I think we are many things and we are mean in addition to being kind and caring and heartbroken. We're everything. The thing I watch out for and force myself to do is to give every character, at least every important character, many levels. And, so I think as long as a character isn't a caricature or isn't one-dimensional or even two-dimensional, but for everything that I wrote about each woman that is not flattering, I also made a point to express other sides of her.
Right. The book deals with this relationship between friends. It also deals with changes in the media industry. As someone who works in the media industry, what motivated you to want to talk about this, and what things are you seeing that made you want to feature this in a way that, as far as I know, hasn't been really talked about in a novel?
Right. Well, I didn't want, this isn't a media stats. I mean, there's an element of that in it. What I was really doing, it really boils down to the emotional questions of the story. And I brought in the industry that I love and have grown up in and I'm watching in such a crisis because I thought it worked really well with a parallel to what was happening in a friendship triangle, in the sense that in both cases, people are scrambling to adapt and survive. And there is a sense of threat and sense of not only the floor falling out, but it's fallen out. And, people are clinging to, the chandeliers for their dear life. So that's, I think a book that was just looking at the changes in media would be limited in its, it would be limited.
Yeah. One of your characters is a podcaster, and it's kind of funny to talk about that on a podcast.
I know, it's just funny. Yeah, so I that was the one thing that I really actually didn't know anything about. It's funny. I was thinking, as a reporter, it's very common to me, when I wrote young adult novels and I decided things were going to be set here or there, I would call them up, and I was sort of full of, I was like, why wouldn't you want to let me in? I would just talk my way into tours of places. And so it occurred to me as I was writing this book, in which, one of the characters, a very lovely character, but very lost character, salvation, is through podcasts. And I thought I could, go and do a little reporting and check out what they're like. And I didn't, and it was really fun to just try to imagine from all of I did the reporting, and then I listened to millions of hours of podcasts, but just to try to imagine like what the scene was like, how it worked, how, I don't know, what dials or knobs were moved up and down. But that was a very aspirational side plot for me as well. Just, I think podcasts in this moment, I think by now everyone agrees that podcasts are one of the most exciting things happening in this moment. But I was an early adopter to the medium, and it just, there's just nothing overproduced about them. And they rely on the power of conversation, which is a dying activity, sadly.
Right. It really started about 15 years ago or so with blogging and the rise of that, and how the rise of that started upsetting some, kind of staid and tried and true media enterprises, and this idea that there are other voices out there and there are no gatekeepers for good or ill. And then podcasting evolves out of that. As someone who was working in traditional media, I think you were working at Vogue while you were writing this book. How do you see, from someone on both sides, how do you see the media landscape changing, and what do you think could be coming up next?
Oh God, I don't know what's coming up next, but I think in terms of a fashion magazine, I think there is both with as resources are becoming more scarce, and also I think as with the transparency that social media has instilled in all of us, there's this like desire for honesty that, an old school publication that just traffics in fantasy, that doesn't really feel like it has a place in our moment anymore. And just in terms of the business model of old school media, I find it interesting that a lot of companies that for, forever, they put out magazines and newspapers, and they, became fat and rich off of that. And now that's, it's sort of being treated as this art form that has to be preserved. And so even the most like hidebound, respected, historic institutions are having to try to figure out new experimental ways of supplementing the thing that matters to them the most. So we've entered a very inventive period, which is cool.
Well, and while podcasting and the move from print media to digital and all of those things play a very important role in this book, it's not really what the story's about. At the kernel, at the root of this story, what is the story about to you?
The story is about the mystery of why does female friendship matter so much, and how can we keep a place for it in our lives when it so often goes to pieces. It's a story about three women who've been friends for a while, and as time moves on, tensions and resentments and grievances accrue, and yet each of the women, as I wrote them and filled them out, they're all worth having in your life. They're all phenomenal people. So that's the story about the heartbreak and necessity of female friendship.
You have said that female friendship is the real romance of our time. Is that because in our ever more connected world, we're actually becoming more disconnected? And is this a call for deeper, true friendships?
I would say it's, for me, what I meant by romance is there's just more mystery, and there's more, it's harder to control, and it can be, I think romantic relationships, of course, are romantic and fizzy in the beginning, but female friendships can stay that way for a very long time because one never knows where one stands with their friend, or when you hope, even when you're feeling really good about what you have going on, you never know, like, how do they really feel about that weird thing I told them, or like, do they feel sorry for me? Do they feel jealous of me? Do they, what's their, like, how would they describe me in 3 sentences to someone? Like, what's the meanest thing they've thought about me? And also, I think we try really hard in our friendships to amuse each other. You see, you go to a restaurant, you see a married couple eating silently, and you don't see that so much with friends, right? I think people try hard, and they put a lot of energy into the conversation, and and I think my female friends are very indulgent. I'm very sensitive, and I'm an observer, and I'm also a feeler, and my friends are there for me to absorb whatever indignity is on my mind, and talk it through with me.
I love that. There are really 3 strong central characters in this book. As writers, we always tend to put ourselves in what we write. It's just part of what we do. For most people, though, if you asked a reader to tell you who they think represents you the most, a lot of times it's nowhere near what people think. We show up with our traits and things in the least likely places that other people might suspect. Which character do you identify with, and or are any of these analogous to you?
Yeah, there's one character who I think people who aren't thinking about it hard enough will definitely say is the character that is me, because there's one character who has the trappings of my life, and I found, we were talking about comedy, I found that hilarious when I was writing it, that I was going to write this extra annoying woman, but who was going to be kind of Lauren in the book. So there's a woman, she is a new mother, she works at a magazine on a sort of behind the scenes, as she calls it, she's a word janitor, so she's editing these people. She's also a young adult writer so yes, there are a lot of superficial similarities, and but in fact, as that character Rachel evolved, and and as I added in new layers and new emotions, she's made. I like her, but I don't feel like much of my psychology or experience is reflected in her. I'm very happy for her. I'm very happy for what happens in the end of the book. I think I'm really pleased that she's stopped driving herself crazy, and she's like ready to go to a deeper place and stop worrying about what people think about her so much. But there, the book is fueled by emotions, and my emotions are all over the place, and they're in the pages.
I love it. It's a fascinating book. It's a fun read that will keep you turning pages to see how things end up. How Could She is out available now in hardcover, Kindle edition, audiobook, however you like to read, you can get it. Lauren, when people are finished with this book, when they close that back cover, What do you hope they're left with?
I hope they're left with an appreciation of their friends and also a sense of liberation, that they're not alone, that they, the feelings that they have, they might, be mad at themselves for, or the things about themselves that they find ugly and embarrassing, that they realize that they're natural, and that they realize that how they can maybe take it a little easier on themselves and on their friends in order to make their friendships stronger. I hope they have the new definition of what a good friendship is.
Lauren, if people are just discovering you and want to dig into your back catalog and follow along for news coming up and all of that good stuff, is there a place they can connect with you online?
Of course, yeah. I have a website, and I'm also a journalist, and I write for a lot of different places. So my journalism and essays are all on laurenmechling.com, and then I'm also a very maybe too involved. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, as I have been these days, and so I'm on Twitter as Lauren Mechling, and then it's Mechling, and I also have 2 Instagram accounts. One of them is Laurenomics, like economics, but Lauren. And then the other one, which is a whole other story, and they'll have to email me if they want to understand, is it's what I call my clog blog. It's an Instagram account devoted to clogs and the lifestyle around them, and it's sort of it's very dear and sincere, and it's tongue in cheek, and it's called @thecloglife on Instagram.
Oh my God, that's gonna eat up half my day, I'm sure.
Oh my God, that's fun.
Lauren, it's been so much fun talking. I love the book. We're going to put links to everything in the show notes of this
Yay.
episode. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Oh, I thank you. It was really fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Author Stories. Go to hankgarner.com to find all of the archives of the show, and be sure to subscribe while you're there.